Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. Really excited to see such a large group of Vermont credit unions online with us this morning. And I think that's because the topic is so important, which, of course, we all understand housing is an issue that we're facing in Vermont, a shortage, and looking for opportunities to try to improve that. And so we are really pleased to have Jeff Dube from the Vermont Department of Housing and Community Development join us this morning. Probably all of us have heard about the opportunities moving forward with the Homes for All initiative. And Jeff is going to share with us the progress that's being made and the ways in which hopefully Vermont credit unions can get involved with that. We're really hoping that after this discussion, we can share some best practices with each other. We can all get creative to try to help borrowers who may be interested in moving forward and trying to start their own projects under the Homes for All initiative. So looking forward to hearing more, and certainly we will have more to share after today's discussion as well. So I think Jeff has about 25 to 30 minutes presentation, and then we will have some time for questions. So if you all wouldn't mind waiting towards the end, we'll leave plenty of time for your questions. So Jeff, good morning. Welcome to Vermont Credit Union Leaders.
Thank you, Carrie. It's great to be with you all here this morning. So thanks again for taking time out of your day. My name is Jeff Dube. I'm a community planner and project manager with the Department of Housing and Community Development. My division is a small and mighty one. We provide a lot of support and technical assistance and funding to the regional planning commissions to support municipalities across Vermont. We administer the federal and state tax program as well to support downtowns and revitalization efforts across the state as well. We're not normally in the housing space, but we did identify a need and created a project that could help address it. I don't think it's a surprise to any of you, but we really just need more housing, and particularly more housing options to meet the needs of Vermonters across the state. And so to do that, we think really what we need to be doing is thinking about how these homes are built and permitted as well. So we launched Homes for All to really tease at this issue as well. A bit of a backstory before we jump into Homes for All. This is a photo of Bristol in the 80s. It's certainly not a photo we would use within our marketing campaigns to promote Vermont, but we've been working really hard over the past 25 years really to create programs and incentives and funding streams to really support the vitality of our downtowns and village centers. On the right, we have Bristol today, and we've really seen a tremendous amount of progress and work in our downtowns and centers. Certainly the work's never done, but we're very pleased with the results that we're getting. That said, when we turned our attention to the neighborhoods that surround these centers, we weren't really seeing the housing starts or the revitalization and investment in these supporting neighborhoods. And not to pick on Barry, but this is Barry, and we noticed that 0% of these lots in this photo conform with their existing bylaws. So that was really hampering reinvestment and housing production in some of these neighborhoods. And really there is opportunity in these spaces. They're not fully built out. And part of this challenge is this idea of missing middle housing. A lot of these neighborhoods that support our downtown centers have this missing middle housing type that really sits between our single family homes and large multi-unit podium construction. These are things like duplexes, townhomes, cottage court designs, stacked flats, and multi-unit structures. And these can really help meet the needs of a wide variety of Vermonters, whether it be folks from young families just looking to get started in Vermont, or folks that are maybe overhoused out in the rural areas and have 3 bedrooms, but really just need 1 and are looking to downsize and get closer to centers that have more services for them. And part because of the bylaws, part because of financial reasons, we're sort of stuck between these 2 modes of development, large single families and large multi-unit apartment buildings. Certainly we need both. The large multi-unit apartment buildings benefit from economies of scale, but they're really hard to do in our neighborhoods. So we really wanted to think through how we could promote this missing middle housing type and get Vermonters to say yes to this style of housing. So we've been at this conversation for a while, since really 2013 with our neighborhood development area designation and other programs. We've been looking to create incentives and create programs that help with the revitalization of our neighborhoods and this idea of missing middle housing. It's gone through the Home Act, it's gone through recent changes with Act 181, but the most recent one, which we're really excited about, launched in January. It's the Community Housing Infrastructure Program. Essentially, it's a mini TIF program that can help a project build the infrastructure needed to support housing growth without making the individual unit bear the cost of that infrastructure investment. So, we can talk more about that at a later time. It's going to be municipality driven, and it can have the support and the backing of the developer, so the municipality doesn't have to back the debt. So we think it's a big opportunity to get some of the housing that we desperately need. And more recently, Homes for All is part of this initiative, really to try to help Vermonters see housing a bit differently in their communities and see a new path forward, and hopefully embrace the change that's needed to keep Vermont vital. So to do that, in 2013, we launched Homes for All, and this is really our initiative to reintroduce this missing middle housing type to Vermonters, but secondarily to stand up a new cohort of small-scale developers that can add units within their existing communities and neighborhoods that really have the trust and buy-in and hopefully some of the skill to get this work done. So with this phase one, the toolkit, hopefully you've seen it floating around the blue book. We worked with 5 communities to really understand what types of housing they would say yes to in their backyard, and really reintroduce this missing middle housing type. Those communities were Arlington, Bellows Falls, Middlesex, Rutland City, and Vergennes. And along with this housing style, we were also looking to introduce 2 different modes of development that can help communities meet their design goals, their housing needs, but also economic development goals as well. So these are being gentle infill, where perhaps there's just an overlooked lot in areas that are still connected to the downtown by way of sewer and sidewalks, but really has great development potential. Maybe it's a double lot that could fit another duplex or another set of units as well, but also this idea of incremental development. So we've got a couple great incremental developers around Vermont, John and Jeff Dunbar being one of them, Jonah Richards up in Fairleigh another, and these are folks that are operating within their communities. They really have the trust and the buy-in from their neighbors to really get this work done, and have been really instrumental in changing the conversation around housing growth within their communities. So as part of this phase one effort, we worked with those 5 communities to identify case studies to really demonstrate the potential of this infill approach and missing middle housing at large. So this is an example from Rutland City. This was almost hard to believe that it was vacant. It's a corner lot right in downtown. It's flat, it's vacant, it's already with access to sewer and water. So then the challenge became working with the community and the property owner to really find a housing style and project that fit in with their goals and matched the existing character of the community. So here we see a side-by-side duplex with an added accessible unit in the back of the structure. And you'll see that the roof pitches, the setbacks, the general form of the overall structure really match the existing neighborhood and homes nearby. And as part of this design exercise, we were really trying to be mindful about what Vermonters needed for a livable house, but also the way we could design that in a very cost-effective manner. So we were looking at this idea of affordability by design, where we're stacking things like wet walls. We're looking for structural economies in the building, really looking to maximize cost effectiveness here while balancing livability. I always joke, I would love a mudroom and front hall closet. I just don't have it, but we were trying to be very mindful of providing that within these home designs. So in green and blue, you'll see the side-by-side duplex. The orange or yellow in the back of the structure, that's the accessible bonus unit with a ramp up to the back, fully accessible as well. And so to build more of this housing within our communities, we were really looking to help small scale developers demystify the process. There's certainly a lot of different pieces to the puzzle here. So a large portion of this workbook, the Homes for All Toolkit, is really dedicated to a step-by-step guidance of how to become a small scale developer and build some of this housing, whether it be new construction or taking one of these larger existing single family homes and converting it into a duplex that better matches the housing needs within their communities. So we cover everything from identifying a team and sites down to financial feasibility, and we have sample pro formas as well. But then, of course, permitting and construction, and even all the way down to property management if folks want to go for the rental properties. So this is launching now. This is phase 2 of our effort. This is really looking to take that blue workbook to life into a series of trainings and development workshops, if you will. And so this is launching now. As I mentioned, this is our small scale developer training program. We have a wonderful partnership between the Department of Housing and Community Development, the Vermont Housing and Finance Agency, and the Land Access and Opportunity Board. And so we're bringing in development professionals from the Incremental Development Alliance and Helm Construction Solutions, and also some of our local development partners like Ivy Van and the Dunbar brothers down in Bellows Falls, Rockingham, and really looking to create a series of trainings and learning opportunities to help these small scale developers get to work building. So depending on your current knowledge level or where you are with your project, we've got different entrance points to the program. And it's really being thought of as an ecosystem where if you want to go for the 101 level style course, you can start there and go through sequentially. But if you really find yourself more with a shovel ready project and need just a little bit more of one-on-one assistance to really dial in the funding streams and the pro forma for the project, we've got special programs through the LAOB to help you with that one-on-one assistance. Another exciting thing is this community of practice that's being stood up both online and in person to really get a network of builders collaborating and working together and sharing knowledge. So we're also starting to see affinity groups as well, centered around farm worker housing or different ownership models like land banking solutions and shared equity models as well. So in February, we had our first workshop, our first 101 style workshop. This got about, over 65 participants in the room for a day-long workshop. It was really, really awesome to see some of the knowledge being shared and the learning that was happening in that in-person setting. We have 3 more workshops across the state for this first round of workshop programming. The next one is next week, next Wednesday in Middlebury. So if you haven't yet registered, I can drop a link in the chat and we can make sure that information gets spread around. But we've got over 200 Vermonters registered for the different aspects of the training program. And we've got representation from all 14 counties in Vermont. And we're also starting to see neighboring states like Maine and New Hampshire taking notice in terms of what we're doing for Homes for All. So it's really exciting. But this is phase 3. This is 802 homes, and this is our pre-approved building catalog. We're looking back to this year's robot catalog of home designs and also the Aladdin home catalog. This was very effective at creating housing that is really loved and cherished in our Vermont communities and neighborhoods already. And we're seeing how it works in the more modern times with folks like South Bend, Indiana, Kalamazoo, Fayetteville, Arkansas. There's been a number of these. I think to a certain extent we're the first state to tackle this at the state level. So we're really excited to see how this could improve the permitting process and create some more consistency in the development timeframes for our small scale developers navigating this. So we'll have our 10 home designs. These will be construction ready documents that are pre-approved by the state Division of Fire Safety at, all the way at the top at the state level. And the hope being that this would trickle down to local communities with a streamlined local permitting and approval process that would match with local infill opportunities that's supported by their bylaws, and really just try to get us to a home delivery model that's a little bit more predictable and a little less risky for our builders. So like phase one, we're working with 3 communities, Essex Junction, Hartford, and Manchester, to really create a roadmap for this administrative approval process or streamlined permitting process. So hopefully we can get to yes a little quicker and perhaps move the planning and public conversation up to the town plan, up to the comprehensive plan level. So by the time we get to the housing conversation, we're not approving or denying each project at that level. We've already gotten to yes from that standpoint with our planning conversation. So in terms of 802 homes and our pre-approved catalog, we're really midway through the project. In February, we had our community design workshops. Great to see Rachel in Essex Junction. This was our opportunity to test fit the home designs within communities and really try to understand if folks could see themselves living in these homes or living next to them if they were to wind up on a lot near them. From here, we've mapped out which of the 10 home designs will go through the construction document process. We're hoping to launch a statewide survey in early May to spread information statewide, hopefully get more design feedback before they go through the construction documents, but also to demonstrate that communities are ready and willing to say yes to these designs up front, really to get at that idea of pre-approval or a streamlined permitting process. In December, we'll have all of our construction documents wrapped up. We're going to launch the project with a large public-facing event that would bring together small-scale developers, builders, folks from the banking and finance community, hopefully, to really see the potential of this project and hopefully hit the ground running with units on the ground not too far after that. So like phase one, we are looking to identify case studies again to demonstrate potential. We're still working with this idea of gentle infill that really started the project, but looking around Manchester and some other communities, we were starting to see a lot of overlooked parcels, if you will, that were still connected to downtowns and village centers by way of sidewalk and sewers, but just haven't been developed for one reason or the other. So we're looking to see how these 10 home designs could play well in the same sandbox together, if you will, and be rearranged to create a cohesive neighborhood that, again, met the needs of different community members, but also could help with economic development in the village centers and really help communities take best advantage of one of their biggest resources and assets, that being their sewer system. So in terms of the 10 home designs, I think what's unique, partially unique about our 802 homes catalog is that we're really focusing, again, on this idea of missing middle housing. So we've got designs that operate or play in the ADU space all the way up into the 6-unit building type and everything in between. So we've got a few single family home designs as well that could also, be arranged in that cottage court or cottage cluster idea as well. So on the left, we have a railroad flat. This could accommodate some of our narrower sites. And we're really looking to think through how the 10 different home designs meet different needs of Vermonters, whether it be age in place, starter homes, or multi-generational housing, how they map to different infill site characteristics. Obviously, the one on the left is very much a narrow site compatible design, and also how they operate in the for sale or for rent market. And again, being mindful of how these do or do not trigger different fire safety and life safety code requirements as well. So I'll breeze by these pretty quickly. These are 2 different duplexes that we have. The one on the left is our paired starter home. We think it's rather clever in that it presents as very much a single family home, but does have 2 units in it. And with 2 separate ground floor entries, hopefully this could operate as a condo or townhome model a little bit easier as well. We've also heard from the public that this idea of passive income by way of an ADU could be very helpful for getting folks in the door to homeownership. So this back-to-back duplex that you see on the left, again, it presents very much as a single family home, but it does have that additional bonus unit in the back. And I recognize these are small. There's more information and more detail to the designs that I'll post into the chat. But the idea being that this could offer folks passive income by way of the ADU, but it could also operate in that multi-generational housing type that could be really critical for aging parents that need to get closer to care and loved ones as they age. These are some of our fourplex designs. The one on the left has 2 stacked flats in the front of it with 2 townhomes, 2 townhome-like designs in the back of it to give us 4 units. And within the catalog, we're trying to be very mindful about how the designs could be split and rearranged to create a different home type that's not necessarily represented in the 10. So with this one, just based on some of the test fits that we were doing in communities, it seemed like the ability to split off this back to front duplex, if you will, at the demising wall or party wall would be really beneficial for a narrower lot that couldn't accommodate a full 70-foot depth 4-unit building. And, quite frankly, maybe a developer just doesn't want to develop that many units on a site. So we're trying to think through flexibility in the designs here. You'll see on the right, this narrow lot fourplex, the design's sort of in process. So even the designs I'll link you to online, they're changing week to week, just getting ready for the statewide survey and really trying to make sure that we have home designs that are going to last throughout the construction design process. So we've got a lot of trace paper flowing around, a lot of markers going. So it's fun in this stage of the process. So this is our stackable 4 to 6 unit building on the left. This is really 2 units on each floor plate. And we think that having just the flexibility, again, to go up to 4 or 6 units with the design, just based on site constraints or developer preferences, could be helpful. This is obviously likely for rent, likely operating in that workforce housing style of it, but trying to be mindful of wherever we can operate or offering the ability to have an age in place or an accessible unit on the ground floor, just recognizing that as needs change, folks might be looking for that housing style and need there. On the right is our townhome. This is, again, going through sort of a redesign, but we think this is a very good way to add more units in our neighborhoods and existing centers while still offering a home type that has a front door entry, a private entry, and even private space that could operate in that condo ownership model as well. So we're excited to see where this goes. So I think one of the most exciting aspects of 802 Homes is this idea of offsite construction. So we're looking to support the way homes are designed and built now with traditional platform stick-built framing, but also looking towards the future of construction and home building with offsite construction. So within the catalog, we're looking to support the wide array and diversity of offsite home construction types across Vermont and northern New England. So you'll be able to build it stick-built traditional framing that could also go panelized construction with the idea of pods as well. But then we'll have a second construction document set that could be this volumetric offsite construction design that's really like these large Lego blocks that get reassembled on site to create a home design. And we do have builders in Vermont that are doing this now, one being Huntington Homes. It's amazing to see what they can do. We understand that they can build a single family home in about 96 hours. From there, it's shipped and craned into place on site. And within 5 hours, it's watertight. And within a month of finished work, it's ready for move-in day. So it's quite amazing to see how quick this could go. The photo on the left is Stonecrop Meadows in Middlebury. This was done with Huntington Homes and Summit Properties. And so these 6 townhomes were placed on site within a week. And then again, it's just about a month per unit to get the finished work done inside. We think there's a lot of benefits here. Obviously, speed to market, which I've been saying, but Summit also spoke to the reduced risk with being able to lock in pricing from for the home designs up front instead of the pricing moving week to week with just building costs and material supply costs. We do think there's cost savings. We understand it to be more cost effective if we can create repeatable designs that really get stood up in the factory and dialed in from their production standpoint. It's hard to do with one-off builds, but we do think there's potential here. And obviously there's labor efficiencies. If we're working inside, we're able to extend the building construction season as well, but also we're able to open up the trades to more folks that maybe couldn't do the super labor intensive processes outside in the hot sun. And we do see that there's consistent quality and less waste, and of course scalability if we can start to create a pipeline for some of these units and tap into some other manufacturers and folks that are operating across state lines as well. So beyond the home designs themselves, we will be working with communities to create resources that could help with implementation. The obvious one is the design guide. This will be sort of our public-facing lookbook, if you will, for the 10 home designs. It'll have precedents for missing middle home types. It'll have best practices as well for infill site design and new neighborhood creation, like how can we build a better subdivision that creates community, creates more usable open space, and really brings people together around shared community there as well. And of course, we'll have universal design and age in place and how that plays out within the 10 home designs as well, and really best practices there. We'll also have the housing capacity web map. This will be similar to what we did with phase 1, but now with the 3 communities for 802 homes. This will be sort of a myth busting exercise, if you will, for folks that don't really see the infill potential the same way we do, just showing folks that there is a lot of unused land within our centers and downtowns and neighborhoods, and how we could better leverage our sewer system, whether built out or planned to create more housing in areas that benefit from smart growth, whether it be other transportation options or just the ability to create community around these places. And lastly, our process guide, and this will be our development ready best practices for communities that really want to make sure they're doing everything they can to plan for housing in the right way. So what are they doing for infrastructure planning and growth? How can they tap into best practices for as of right or by right development? How can they look towards the 3 communities that we partnered with and really leverage the best practices we identified for development review and streamline permitting processes, and really look to create an adaptable checklist for permitting processes in municipalities that dovetails with 802 homes or missing middle housing in general. So beyond the catalog, we've been in conversation with a lot of folks. We really want to make sure that the 802 homes and Homes for All at large is not a well thought out planning exercise, but does get us to homes in the ground. So we've tapped into anyone from the finance and banking community to building material supply. Obviously folks with energy efficiency and chip implementation, but we're also starting to have conversations with Pew Charitable Trust and the Urban Land Institute to think through how we can create more scale and regional collaborations to drive down costs even further. And part of that is supportive legislation through the Treasurer's Office. We're really excited about this. This would use some of the reserve funds from the LIAC program, hopefully move it from 10% up to 12.5% to create the opportunity for a bulk purchasing or offsite construction and purchasing program that would help some of our offsite manufacturers scale up production to the next level, hopefully again to ratchet down costs as well. So to test out this new model, we're exploring pilot opportunities to bring the 802 homes catalog to life with homes in the ground, like I mentioned, and this would really test out some of the ideas that we're seeing and hearing throughout the process. So we've talked to a lot of folks in this process, and it's been great to see how each one sort of holds a different piece of the puzzle, right? And all of these conversations are leading us to this bigger question of, how can 802 homes be that vehicle for change rather than just a set of construction documents? And so what we're starting to think through is this idea of aligning the system and not thinking about building form and local codes and construction and infrastructure as separate things to tackle throughout home construction, but trying to align the system to make housing more predictable and less risky for folks. And, I've alluded to it, but part of this conversation is really trying to create a pipeline for these home housing units, whether it be on-site construction, but particularly off-site construction, because within that world, these one-off bespoke designs can't create efficiencies from that manufacturing standpoint. It's really got to be repeated production of standardized designs. And with this, hopefully we can start to stabilize supply chains for folks and enable bulk purchasing that would hopefully lower construction costs. We are hearing from a lot of offsite builders that they would love to scale up, but they can't do so unless they have a pipeline that would justify the huge capital, whether it be from staff or a facility standpoint, to deliver more homes. So we've got a ton of work to do here in this space, but the ultimate goal is obviously homes at a price Vermonters can afford. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to think through a funding stream and alignment of programs and a different housing delivery system at large that could work without some of the federal subsidies, largely because they're really tricky to navigate, particularly for our small scale developers. We definitely recognize that the federal subsidies are still critical to meet the needs of our most cost burdened Vermonters. But it does come with a lot of added restrictions and requirements that's tricky for small scale developers to navigate. So again, I think really the hope is by aligning various parts of the system, we can start to get to missing middle housing production that's a little bit more predictable and ultimately buildable. So thank you. I'll pause there.
Thank you, Jeff. We appreciate you sharing an update and the work that's gone into this project. We want to open it up for questions at this point, see if anyone has feedback or next step thoughts about how we may, as the credit union industry, support getting creative around financing. And as Jeff said, ultimately trying to think about this as an aligned model where financing is one component of a project. But how can credit unions be a partner in this as part of a solution to this housing issue in the state of Vermont? Anyone have any thoughts or questions?
I have a question if I
Hi,
can
Annie.
jump in. Hello. Hi, Jeff. I think this initiative is awesome, and I'm really excited about it. And I see kind of two ways we fit in. Of course, one is with the developers and kind of the financing on that end. But being in the residential mortgage world and on the borrower side of things, I guess I'm wondering more long-term and the intended outcomes of these properties. Do you or have you heard developers are going to kind of keep these and rent them out, or are they going to be perhaps made into like a condo association and sold unit by unit?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thanks, Annie. We in the department, we're sort of agnostic in terms of the home ownership structure and whether folks want to keep them as for rent or for purchase. We're trying to create a tool that would help developers in general and really trying to create 10 different home designs that could go for sale or be for rent. And then some like the Village 4 that might be that townhome style that could be both, right? And could be that condo home ownership model. We think it's ultimately up to the developer to make that choice, but we're just trying to create flexibility in the program.
Thank you. Do you know if they're having those conversations or thinking through because there are, I guess where my head is going, there's a lot of condo regulations that are on the table right now in our world. So if they are planning on making them into condos and going to sell them as units, that's kind of where my angle is at the moment, is making sure they're educated on that process and know kind of the ins and outs of what they need to do to set it up.
Yeah, thank you. I do think there is appetite to enter the condo space with it. I do understand it can be kind of tricky. So we've been pushing folks within the training program to help demystify that process for folks. maybe in the future there's the opportunity to bring some of you all in to help with that conversation if they need a little bit more support. But I would love to see it more, quite honestly. I do think some of these home designs can go for rent, but could quite easily be owned with their private entry and private outdoor space, and it can help meet some of our goals, like I mentioned, for economic development, while still providing a pathway for home ownership as well.
Great. Paul?
Hi, my name's Paul Simon. I'm a landscape architect, but I have like 3 different hats. I'm on the board for North Country Federal Credit Union. So I look at this from a lender's perspective too sometimes, and I'm also a developer. So I'm doing some projects throughout Vermont, either as a consultant or I'm involved myself. So I think one of the other questions I have is just, of course, it comes to affordability to get these projects to pencil out. I've been trying to work on a project in Lebanon, New Hampshire here, where they changed to cottage court similar zoning style approach, and the city's trying to do a demonstration project on Barrow Street, and it's very difficult for it to work out. And they are working with preferred building systems, which is similar to Huntington Homes, so they're looking at modular and all that. And I think another challenge that we have when we look at the new CHIP program is that I think one of the requirements that they talk about is that it being a primary residence for, the people that end up occupying these homes. So with the 802 program, it looks a little bit more feasible in that you might have single family type units and maybe can go that approach, but where you have more multis or duplexes, triplexes, that kind of thing, it could be difficult in trying to administer that, and then how the financing works to kind of make sure you, I don't know, police that somehow. Like I'm curious what your thoughts are there, and if you are, since CHIP is still in the works with VEPC, and I know it's just started, if there's coordination between what you're doing and what CHIP's doing to talk to VEPC about that, I guess that piece of it.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. And nice to see you again. I think we met 3 years ago at the Vermont Developers Conference. I'm a landscape architect myself, so I'm wearing the housing hat today. Good question about CHIP. We are in conversations with VEPC all the time. I was talking with them yesterday, so we are trying to make sure that we're coordinated and aligned here. On the pilot program, though, we're working with the VLCT, the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, because they received a fair amount of money to help communities with technical assistance to do their application with the developer to make sure that the application is going to be well received and it works for both parties. So we're trying to create our pilot projects to really test how that's working. And it's funny that you mentioned the home ownership being the path through CHIP. We actually heard anecdotal evidence that suggested otherwise. So we're looking forward to testing a few different ways of how this could work. And similarly, we heard that it may not work well for a smaller project, but the other side of the coin is that it could. So I think end of the day, we're just really excited to test different models through the pilot program, and just work with developers through that process. Did I get everything, Paul? Did I miss anything?
No, that's great. I appreciate it. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to get these things to pencil. So we're trying to be strategic about aligning different programs and different funding streams. Like we've been in conversations with the career technical education folks as well, because in Essex Junction, we learned that the CTE Center has land that they're subdividing, bringing kids onto site to build housing. And there's money on the table for other CTE programs doing that as well. So as much as we can leverage the existing programs for home building out there, the better. So we're trying to unturn every rock, if you will.
Great. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah.
Chris?
Hey, everyone. Good morning. I'm just curious, and this wasn't in your presentation, but it's in the news every day, every morning. When you think about what's happening with Act 181, we've got thousands of our members. We're in Southern Vermont. We support 55,000 members, and many of our members are a part of this fight against Act 181, particularly the road rule and the tiering system. what I've struggled with, and Carrie knows this, and many others have heard me talk about housing is one of our foremost concerns as a credit union, and we've been trying to try and solve this. And so what we've been struggling with is we've partnered with the state, we've done LAG funding, we've done some really innovative things, but for example, 50 units of the 98 that we've been proud to support have been stuck in Act 250 rules and mired in a pipeline that's ineffective. And so that's 50 units that could have been broken ground. We could have had units moved in, and that seemed like a really easy one in Rutland City. And so just curious, what advice do you have for us as credit union leaders, as directors, and where do we put our resources? Because, it's almost like we have a state that's worried about conservation, but we also have an acute problem. And it's almost like you have to pick a battle, right? We can't conserve every mountain and every landscape and then build 30,000 units. And so, what advice do you have for us that don't live in the housing game every day, but are trying to make an impact?
Yeah, it's a great question, Chris. I don't mean to punt, but I'd like to defer you to Alex Farrell, our commissioner, on that one. I do think that the tiered system, at least with 1A, 1B, will help with some of the Act 250 permitting woes that we've been hearing across the state. So I think there is promise there. Obviously in our presentation, we were very focused on supporting and housing growth within our villages and downtown centers. But if folks do want to take the catalog and work within rural settings, we're sort of agnostic to that as well. We just recognize that it's much more cost effective to a certain extent to operate in places that already have access to municipal water and sewer. Obviously, in some sites, we run into issues with brownfields and contamination. So it's not a given by any means, but in terms of tier 3 and the road rule, it does seem that Jill and the Speaker of the House is moving towards this idea of repealing the road rule in tier 3. So I would say follow the conversation there if you feel the need to speak up and join the conversation. But it does seem like there might be some movement on that front. It's a big question. Yeah. I mean, I think from my personal standpoint, there are a lot of opportunities around village centers to create more housing in a way that preserves and protects Vermont's character in the hinterlands, right? And it can help support vitality in our downtowns and centers and create the community that Vermonters love. So, I think it takes housing of all different types, but when we think of different transportation needs or housing needs for Vermonters, I do see great potential within some of our existing centers.
Any other questions this morning? Hi, Rachel.
Nice to see you again too. So the AARP Community Challenge, imagine that's just another goal that might be used.
I don't have
Yeah.
my.
There you go.
Can you
Awesome.
even hear what I'm saying?
I can now. Thank you.
Sorry.
You said AARP.
The AARP Community Challenge grant. How do you see that kind of folding into what you're working on?
Yeah, thank you. So we applied. We did apply for more funding through AARP, the Community Challenge Grant. And our hope there is that we can engage older Vermonters to really dial in the age in place and accessibility amenities within the home designs and have those focused conversations with that demographic, whether it be veterans or older Vermonters with special needs, to make sure that their home designs can accommodate them in a way that makes sense for them without adding features that aren't really necessary and drive costs up. So that's our hope. I think it's end of May that they plan on announcing that, and we'd look to have a series of in-person conversations and online conversations to tap into others across the state to really dial in those home designs.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we certainly appreciate Jeff's time and all of your time joining us this morning. This is just the start of the conversation. Obviously, this is a project that continues to develop, And as Jeff pointed out, and the conversation this morning has identified, there are barriers that we need to continue to work on. And ultimately, to be successful, it will require engagement at the municipality level, certainly continued work with the legislature, as well as conversations between financial institutions and developers. And so we are really excited for all of you to continue to engage in this process, and we will provide information ongoing. At our convention in May, we'll have additional conversations with VHFA, as well as the Vermont Futures Project and the Treasurer's Office, that will continue along these lines in this important initiative to develop housing in the state of Vermont. So please don't hesitate to ask more questions. We will send some information your way from Jeff and his team to provide more to you, but we look forward to continuing this partnership and more conversations with all of you. So thank you so much. Happy Thursday. We hope you have a great day, and thank you for your time this morning.
Yeah, thanks again.
everyone.
Thank you all.
you.
Take care.
Appreciate it.